Hey, what is up, guys? Today I'll be going over 5 biggest calisthenics mistakes ruining your gains. This is a video for all my busy men or people that don't go to the gym for whatever reason. You don't want to get a membership, you don't have the time, you don't want to commute, whatever the reason may be. I'm making this video for all of you guys because if you know anything about fitness, you know that you can build muscle with any kind of resistance training. It doesn't just have to be weightlifting. Your body does not know the difference between lifting your own body weight or lifting a 10, 25, 45 pound plate. Meaning that you can apply the same principles as you do in the gym, as you do with calisthenics. However, because of this specific training style, there's 5 specific mistakes that I personally made and I would like you guys to avoid. Number 1 is chasing too many goals at once. And this can be very easy when getting into calisthenics. Why? Because there's so many different skills that are cool, they look cool, you wanna get there as quickly as possible. However, a big mistake that I myself am still guilty of to this day is chasing way too many goals at once. For example, chasing a muscle up while you're also trying to, achieve a one-arm handstand and then doing a full planche as well while doing a front lever and then also trying to put on 10, 20 pounds of muscle all at once. Instead of doing something like this, choose max 3 goals, and if they overlap, is a million times better. For example, if you're just getting into calisthenics, you have less than 6 months and you cannot muscle up. That's a good goal to set, right? Doing a muscle up. However, don't fly before you start walking, right? Um, that's what I mean when I say try to pick goals that overlap each other. For example, if you only have 6 months under your belt with calisthenics and you're not very much gifted, you're not the most talented in calisthenics, you probably still can't do 15 clean pull-ups. So setting that as one of your goals and then setting the other. So let's say 15 clean pull-ups and then muscle up being another one of your goals. Those two overlap. Why? Because they're the same movement pattern. You need to learn 15 pull-ups first, preferably before you try to go into a muscle up. Why? Because you need that base strength. However, you don't want to, you know, have a goal of losing 15 pounds of fat and then putting on 20 pounds of muscle while trying to learn how to full planche. That just simply does not correlate. They're completely different goals. They're completely different fields. You can have different goals in different areas. However, make sure that they're not too different to each other because you only have a certain amount of energy and time. And trust me, you're better off getting good at a few things than getting mediocre at 10 different things. And this leads to point number 2. Mistake number 2 is skipping the basics, right? Just like calisthenics or just like anything in life, right? You don't want to fly before you start walking. Um, for example, a lot of people make the mistake of they want to learn a handstand, they want to learn a muscle, they want to start doing weighted pull-ups. And this was a mistake that I personally made. I still was not able to do 15 clean, strict pull-ups, and I was already adding weights to my pull-ups. You don't want to do that. Not only does this open the doors to injuries, which is going to set you back so much, it just makes everything a lot harder. And I think the big reason why people lack consistency is because of this as well. They skip the basics. They don't realize that oftentimes, just like anything, anything in life, it's always going to be hard and it's not going to be fun in the beginning because you're not good at it, right? You're not obviously not going to enjoy something that you're not really good at. However, unless you go through the phase of getting good at the basics, you're never going to get to a point in which it is actually fun. And a lot of people don't realize that sometimes you don't even need to train a specific skill that much. You just need to get really good at the basics. For example, I was able to do handstand push-ups, muscle-ups with ease simply because I stopped focusing on that and started focusing more on the basics. Getting really, really good at the basics, and this goes same for the gym as well. Weightlifting. It's the same thing. If you get really, really good at compound movements like your pull-ups, your dips, your push-ups, all that kind of thing, handstand push-ups, everything else is going to become so much easier. If you focus on this first, you focus on, instead of going straight from, oh, I can do 10 pull-ups now to, I want to learn a muscle up, get 10 pull-ups, but then start shooting for 15 and do them strict, and then do pause rep pull-ups, and then do this, and then do that. Perfect the basics, because once you have those perfected, everything else comes so much easier. and it's a lot more fun as well. And you also prevent, injuries, that kind of thing. Mistake number 3 is not tracking your progress. This is a huge, huge mistake, which I swear to God, it saves you so much time if you avoid it. Why? Because think about it. If you're not tracking your progress, it's literally throwing mud at the wall and hoping that it sticks. That's the best way for me to describe it. And this goes for anything in life. If you don't track your progress, a lot of people think that practice is what makes perfect. But I think this is very vague and not really good advice. Why? Because practice can mean a lot of things, right? You can continuously, bust out pull-ups randomly every so often in your backyard, um, and expect results. However, that is very foolish, I believe. Why? Because you're not really tracking anything. You're not really having any kind of structure. So you're not really in a position to expect the results because you haven't really put in the work or the structure or the effort mentally. And I think this is what I mean by this. By tracking your progress, you actually know and you actually have something to aim for in every single workout. And I think this makes everything a whole lot simpler and more fun as well. Just think about it. Rather than just busting out random sets of pull-ups, push-ups, or whatever it is that your workout routine consists of, um, try to log everything, right? Try to, or at least have it in your head. Okay, this time I was able to do pull-ups. I was able to do 10 pull-ups. So next time I'm gonna do 11, or next time I'm gonna add a little bit of weight, or next time I'm gonna do this. And then this goes specifically as well for once you start getting a little bit more advanced, once you start learning more advanced skills. Why? Because when it comes to a simple exercise like pull-ups, there's a number, and it's very easy to know and remember how many times you did that exercise. So it's very easy to track how strong you're getting. But when it comes to something like a handstand or a handstand push-up, you know the learning curve from one progression to the other is so much greater that it's very hard to track your progress. For example, if you're trying to learn a planche, it's very hard to track your progress because it's not like it's an isometric exercise or handstand push-ups, right? There are numbers, but in order to get your first handstand push-up, right, you have to go through other progressions like the frog pose to handstand push-up or just holding a handstand for 10 seconds. And if you actually write it down or you track it somewhere in your notes app, it's going to be a lot more encouraging and you're going to see progress much quicker. And it just overall helps, being just more organized. Mistake number 4 is another huge one, which I definitely made myself, was neglecting recovery. A lot of times, and this is actually a very interesting point. Why? Because I'll say this, and a lot of people will say, well, doesn't it work the other way around? Like vice versa, like neglecting intensity or neglecting not hitting the gym? Yes, that is true. However, most of the time, most people that get into the gym, 9 times out of 10, they make this mistake more often than the other way around. What I mean by this is that if you're really excited about training calisthenics and you actually do it consistently, you're more likely to make the mistake of neglecting recovery than neglecting actually, doing your workouts. Why? I know this from experience. I would quite literally sometimes work all day, 8, 12-hour days, and then it would be 10 p.m. and I have to wake up the next morning at 8 a.m. I would literally hit a workout because I was scared that I wasn't gonna make progress. However, what you must realize when doing this is that any kind of workout that you're gonna do, whether you hit it intense or you hit it lightly, is gonna be worth nothing if your recovery is not there, right? Because the actual process of you getting stronger and building muscle, hypertrophy, right? It happens when you're asleep, and more often than not, more people will neglect the recovery than neglecting actually going to the gym. Because yes, it is true. Bad sleep will lead to bad workouts, but at the same time, if you get too much sleep, if and you don't hit the workout, you're also not gonna go. But what I mean is that more people, more often than not, it's the other way around, right? You neglect your recovery because you're spending so much time worrying about the intensity, all of that. And even though, maybe sometimes you don't even feel fully recovered, you'll still hit another workout. And what you gotta understand is that is just counterproductive. And even though it feels good in your head because, oh, I did the workout, it's not good for your physique and your overall progress long term. But yeah. And mistake number 5, just overcomplicating everything. This pretty much just sums up the whole video, right? Because in theory, building muscle, it's a very simple process. it's simple, not easy, right? Because, you know, it requires consistency, but just 50, 60, 70% of it is just showing up. However, sometimes we get too caught up on small details which don't really make that much of a difference. In the long term, they might, but a big mistake that people make is that they overcomplicate things way too much in the beginning, that they completely forget about what actually matters, which is the basics. Once again, you know, just show up consistently, continue getting stronger, always never neglect recovery, make sure your nutrition is on point, and then everything else can come after, right? A lot of times people will do it the other way around. They'll spend so much time trying to optimize, you know, the amount of calories they're getting in, the macros, this kind of food, the best quality of this, or the way that I'm doing this pull up, or you know, the amount of hours that I'm sleeping, that they completely forget about the basics. You know, you're too caught up on trying to get the best quality of food that you completely forget to work out. Quite literally, right? That's the perfect way of putting it, and you don't want to do that. So yeah, if this video was helpful, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and also you can also apply for a free 15-minute fitness consultation with me. See if it would make sense for us to work one-on-one with each other, so you can reach your goals quicker. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.